For over 2 decades, Queen Camilla's private garage was locked tight. No access, no questions. But when a forgotten key was found during renovations, workers uncovered a hidden chamber filled with shocking secrets. Diana's letters, sealed tapes, and an unregistered car tied to a royal scandal. What was she hiding? The door no one dared touch. For over 2 decades, it sat untouched. A garage tucked behind Clarence's house, quiet, sealed, and surrounded by silence. Staff walked past it every day, but no one ever questioned it. No deliveries, no cleaning, no inspections. Not even King Charles, some whispered, dared to ask what was inside. It wasn't just locked, it was off-limits. The message from Camilla had always been the same. Never open it. Not without me. And everyone listened. That kind of order doesn't come with ordinary storage space. This wasn't a wine cellar or a forgotten storeroom. The door was reinforced. The lock? Industrial-grade brass, engraved with a hallmark that made one renovation worker pause. 1996. That was before Diana died. Before Camilla ever became queen. Before the country was told to forgive. Why install a high-security lock in that year? That question sat unanswered for years, until early 2025, when routine renovations unearthed something unexpected. A painter was working on the East Wing, removing old frames and preparing them for restoration. Behind one large portrait, he found a small leather pouch, wedged into a hollow panel in the wall. Inside were 2 antique keys, tarnished with time, but clearly well made. One was standard, but the other was different. Heavy, custom, and engraved with the initials CS, Camilla Shand. The worker turned them in to the site foreman. Most assumed it was nothing until someone mentioned the garage. The foreman didn't speak. He just slipped the key into his pocket and waited for the building to empty. That night, he returned. Alone. The garage door stood exactly as it always had, quiet, covered in dust, forgotten by design. He inserted the key. It fit. The lock turned, and the door creaked open for the first time in nearly 30 years. But what lay inside wasn't a garage. It was a secret. A constructed space with false walls, a controlled climate, and a silence so thick it felt like it had weight. No parked car, no dust-covered bicycles, just the faint hum of air filtration and the sense that whatever this place was, it had been waiting. At the back of the room stood a flat white wall, perfectly smooth. But something felt wrong. It was too even, too deliberate. A quiet knock echoed, hollow. It wasn't a wall, it was a mask. What hid behind it would shake the royal family to its core, and it would begin with a whisper. The whisper behind the walls. The first crack in the silence didn't come from a discovery. It came from a whisper. Weeks before the renovation, a new palace footman, young, unfamiliar with royal tension, paused outside Camilla's private study. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but voices carry in old corridors. And this one stopped him cold. Camilla's voice, sharp but hushed. No one opens it, especially now. Another voice responded, male, nervous, quieter. But the message was clear. The garage wasn't just being ignored, it was being protected. The footman didn't say anything that day, but the words stuck with him. And over time, they started to spread. Quietly, carefully. One staff member to another, the same way secrets always do in old houses built on old power. That's when the stories started resurfacing. One cleaner remembered a time, years ago, when a delivery van had backed too close to the garage entrance. Within minutes, Camilla stormed out, furious, and demanded the driver be banned from the property. Another staffer recalled how, during a public tour of Clarence's house, the garage doors had been draped with a false wall covering, painted to blend in with the estate's color. Guests never knew it was there, but staff did, and they never forgot. What Camilla had with that garage wasn't privacy. It was control. Even senior staff avoided it. One longtime gardener once leaned his tools against the garage by accident. He wasn't seen again the next season. No explanation. It was around this time that someone quietly asked a question that had been buried for years. What if this has nothing to do with the crown? Because the dates didn't match the timeline of Camilla's royal life. That garage had been locked since before she was married to Charles. Before the public rehabilitation tour. Before the titles. So what was she hiding? The foreman's discovery of the key didn't just unlock a door. It unlocked suspicion. Because whatever was behind that wall, Camilla wanted it buried. And now, it was waking up. The lock, older than the crown. The garage door didn't just creak open, it told a story. The hallmark on the lock hadn't gone unnoticed. 1996. A single date stamped in metal. But to those who understood royal timelines, it meant everything. That lock had been fitted before Diana's death, before Camilla was accepted, and long before she wore a crown. Why would a garage require high-level security a year before the world changed? It wasn't standard issue. Not for the royal household, not for anyone. And that date, 1996, held weight. It was the same year Diana gave her explosive panorama interview. The same year she started moving out of royal life. The same year, according to palace rumors, that personal items began to disappear. Letters, small boxes, even a missing piece of jewelry no one ever officially confirmed. The connection was never made, until now. It wasn't just a garage. It was a vault. One protected not by royal guards or cameras, but by silence. And that silence had held for almost 30 years. The more the staff whispered, the clearer the picture became. No one had opened the garage. Not even when Clarence's house underwent expansions. Not when vehicles were swapped. Not when space ran out. Every time someone suggested clearing it, Camilla shut it down. One insider remembered the look in her eyes when it came up. Not anger, not stress. Something colder, fear. The idea began to grow. What if this wasn't about storage at all? What if this was about what needed to stay buried? A place prepared before she was queen. Locked before Diana was gone. Guarded without guards. Hidden in plain sight. No royal protocol could explain that. And yet, someone had finally turned the key. Now all that remained was to see what was waiting behind the wall. The key that shouldn't exist. What the foreman found wasn't a room. It was a message. Behind the thick door, behind years of dust and silence, sat a perfectly constructed false wall. Seamless, painted to match, but hollow. And behind it, something far more deliberate. A hidden chamber. Temperature-controlled. Soundproofed. Humidifier systems installed. Not recently, but decades ago. Whoever built it wasn't improvising. They had planned it down to the wire. But the chamber didn't look royal. It didn't look official. It looked personal. And the key that opened it, that changed everything. The pouch found behind the portrait had already raised eyebrows. But when they examined it more closely, it became undeniable. Inside was a second key, smaller but clearly handcrafted. And engraved in faded lettering were two initials, C.S., Camilla Shand. Her maiden name, her personal key. The pouch had been stashed behind a wall painting, hidden, like someone was hoping no one would ever find it. But it hadn't been lost. It had been intentionally hidden, kept far from the chamber itself, as if just holding the key was dangerous. The night the foreman used it, he entered alone. No security, no approval, just curiosity, and a heavy dose of disbelief. The air was different inside. Cold, still, not musty like storage, but clean, preserved, maintained by something deeper than routine. At the center of the space was a white false wall, almost invisible. But when he tapped it, the sound gave it away. Hollow. Later, when that wall was pushed open by the palace security team, they found what had been hidden for decades. Unmarked trunks, sealed filing cabinets, and a glowing glass display case holding a tiara no one could identify. In the center of the room sat a single trunk. Cracked leather, dust-free, a faded ribbon around the handle, and on the tag, just two letters. D's. They didn't open it that night, but someone had already seen enough to realize this wasn't a garage. This was a secret museum, a place where history had been hidden and rewritten. And in that moment, everyone knew what had to come next. Open the trunk and see if Diana had left something behind. Behind the wall, a secret museum. When the false wall finally swung open, the foreman and security team stepped into a space that felt more like a private vault than any royal garage. The air was unnaturally cold, humming softly with hidden fans and filters. This wasn't a room for cars. This was a room for secrets. Along the walls stood rows of unmarked trunks, stacked like silent witnesses. Heavy filing cabinets bore the faded outline of royal crests, but no labels. At the far corner, a glass display case glowed faintly. Inside sat a tiara no one recognized, older than any piece seen in Camilla's public appearances, untouched by time and unseen by the public. But the centerpiece wasn't along the edges. It was in the middle. A single worn trunk, its leather cracked, but its surface dust-free. A faded ribbon still tied to the handle, as if someone had left it there on purpose. And on the ribbon, two letters that chilled everyone in the room, DS. They didn't open it. Not yet. Orders came quickly. Do not leak. Do not speak. Do not touch anything. The team backed out, locking the garage again. But the damage was already done. Someone had taken a photograph, a grainy shot of the chamber, the glass case, the trunk with the faded ribbon. It would become the image that changed the monarchy. Because this wasn't just storage, it was a secret museum, curated in silence, a room built not to hold objects, but to hide stories. And at its heart, one trunk whispered a single name without ever spelling it out. Diana Spencer. And inside that trunk was a truth no one was ready to confront. Diana's letters. And something worse. When the trunk was finally opened under the watch of a royal historian, the air in the room shifted. There, neatly stacked, were handwritten letters from Diana, her slanted cursive unmistakable. Some were addressed to Charles, some to William and Harry, and some, shockingly, to Camilla herself. These weren't diary entries. They were confessions, warnings, testimonies of a woman isolated inside an institution she no longer trusted. "I feel surrounded, but alone," one read. "The walls watch me, but do not protect me. another spoke directly of betrayal, manipulation, and deliberate isolation. If anything happens to me, remember, it was not chance. It was a plan, and there, tucked between the letters, was something even more chilling. A sealed envelope marked, "For William, when he's ready." The seal still intact, waiting. But the paper wasn't the only evidence. Among the stack lay a non-disclosure agreement, signed by Camilla, dated just weeks before Diana's death. No explanation, no cover letter, just the signature and the date. August 1997. Beside it, a small cassette tape. Its label faded, but one word still visible. Call. No one wanted to play it. Not yet. But everyone in the room knew that whatever was on that tape could change the story forever. Letters were one thing. A recording was another. The historian closed the trunk, hands trembling. "This isn't just history," he said quietly. "This is evidence." And the next step, playing the tape, would be the moment the past began to speak out loud. At the tape that should never have been heard. 2 days passed before they dared to play it. The cassette tape, pulled from Diana's hidden trunk, had become more than evidence. It was a ticking clock. Labeled only with the word "call," it had the fragile look of something that had waited too long to be heard. No one spoke openly about it, but behind the walls of Clarence's house, the tension was impossible to ignore. A private listening room was secured, doors sealed, curtains drawn. Only 3 people were allowed inside: the royal historian, a senior legal advisor, and an archival security officer. A recorder was found, one just old enough to fit the tape. It clicked softly as the reels began to turn. What they heard changed everything. Camilla's voice crackled through the static first. Younger, sharper, more calculated. Her tone was brisk, almost impatient, as if she were mid-crisis. She referenced a press packet, urging someone unnamed to retrieve it before it leaks. That was the first clue, that something was already out of control. Then came the second message. This time it was a full recorded conversation. Camilla and an unidentified man. The audio was slightly distorted, but the voices were clear enough to follow. "If she keeps pushing this interview angle," Camilla said, "we'll release the August plan." That should stop her. The room went silent. The phrase "August plan" was like a blade, clean, cold, and deadly. It connected the conversation directly to the final month of Diana's life. For years, there had been speculation about media interference, press deals, even strategic leaks. But this wasn't rumor. This was a plan, said out loud. And it didn't stop there. In the final clip, Camilla was heard again, this time talking to someone simply labeled the cleaner. Her voice was calm, as if giving basic instructions. "Have the items from the old flat been moved?" she asked. The response was muffled, but her final line was crystal clear. "Put them in the garage. No one goes there anymore." There it was. Not just conspiracy, not just suspicion, but deliberate concealment, orchestrated by someone who had not yet worn a crown, but was already protecting a future. When the tape ended, no one moved. The historian slowly removed his glasses. The legal advisor sat stiff, eyes forward, refusing to speak. There was no direct proof of a crime, nothing to link Camilla to Diana's death. But what they had was almost more dangerous. Intent, strategy, and cover-up. What was once speculation had become something else entirely. The tape was sealed again, locked away. But someone in that room had already made a copy. And in less than a week, the palace would realize it was too late to control the story. Because while the tape was never meant for public ears, the truth always finds its own way out. And what came next was hidden beneath a tarp in the farthest corner of that garage. The car in the shadows. No one noticed it at first. During the initial sweep of the garage, it had been written off as clutter, just a bulky object covered in thick canvas tarpaulin, pushed behind crates in the darkest corner of the room. But when the team returned days later, this time with full clearance, someone finally pulled the cover back. What they found beneath was a car, but not just any car, a vintage green Jaguar XJS, long out of production, flat tires, dusty windshield, no license plate, and completely unlisted in the Royal Vehicle Registry. It shouldn't have existed. Inside the glove box, they found a burner phone, the kind used for untraceable calls. Its battery was dead, but tucked next to it was something far more chilling, a folded map of Paris. Scribbled in pencil at the bottom, August 25th, 1997, the date Diana died. A route was marked, from the Ritz Hotel through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, ending not at the crash site, but at a small, circled alleyway a few blocks away. It was a shadow route, a second plan. When they ran the car's VIN, the search hit a wall. Then the match came back. It was previously registered to a man linked to MY6, a known field asset who had disappeared from records in the early 2000s. No death certificate, no retirement, just erased. Next to his name in the internal summary was a single line: vehicle decommissioned for private surveillance use. That was the moment the garage stopped being a vault and became a threat. Why was this car, with ties to British intelligence, hidden in Camilla's private chamber? Why was it buried alongside letters, recordings, and sealed contracts? And who was it following? The implications were immediate and dangerous. Was Diana being watched? Was the car there to protect or to monitor? And how did it end up here, sealed off, erased, and unacknowledged by the royal family? The car was quietly removed at midnight, under heavy cover. No statements, no documentation. It was sent to a secure government facility for forensic inspection. But by then, the questions were multiplying. If a surveillance car had been buried, what else had? And back at Clarence House, the pressure began to break the silence, because a photo of the trunk had leaked. William had seen it, and the royal family had 24 hours before the world found out. Clarence House in full panic. They thought they had time. They thought they had control. But secrets don't wait. And by the time the green Jaguar was wheeled out under the cover of darkness, the story had already begun to slip. A single leaked image changed everything. Not of the car, not of the tape, but of the trunk. The one marked DS, the one that had belonged to Diana. Grainy, slightly out of focus, but undeniable. It reached the inbox of a freelance reporter within hours. And not long after that, it landed in William's. He opened the image on his phone late at night. He didn't speak, he didn't ask questions, he just stared at the cracked leather, the ribbon, the faded tag. A trunk that had been locked away his entire adult life. A piece of his mother, sealed and silenced, in Camilla's garage. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, chaos had replaced silence. Camilla had returned early from Bath, unannounced. She walked through the front doors and, according to one witness, asked a single question. "Where is it?" She didn't need to explain. Her face was pale, her voice cold. She knew. Her staff scrambled to contain the fire. Lawyers were summoned, aides were pulled into meetings. A crisis communications plan was drafted, edited, then thrown out. Because the palace wasn't just dealing with scandal anymore, it was dealing with evidence. Charles was still at Balmoral, far enough away to keep his name clear. But word had reached him, fast. He ordered a private briefing, not with aides, not with legal counsel, but with his sons. Except by then, William already knew too much. Inside the palace, no one said it out loud. But the question hung in the air. How long had Camilla kept this secret? And why? Outside the palace, rumors turned into headlines. Bloggers hinted at the map found in the car. Forums posted theories about the August plan. But the one thing everyone agreed on, something was coming. And when Camilla disappeared from public view, canceling all engagements, refusing press, it only made the silence scream louder. One aide was overheard saying, "The garage was never just about hiding things. It was about keeping control." And now that control is gone. The monarchy had survived affairs, divorces, even death. But it had never faced this. A truth that couldn't be spun. A room that couldn't be denied. And a voice, Diana's, that refused to stay buried. The doors were open now. And the public wasn't just curious, they were furious. The public reckoning begins. It took less than 72 hours for the walls to start crumbling. The press went from cautious to relentless. First came the headline in The Guardian. "A discovery at Clarence House raises royal questions." Then came the photo, the trunk, the ribbon, the DS initials, clear as day. The image spread across social media like fire. And in that moment, the British public wasn't just reading news, they were feeling history crack open. For many, this wasn't just a royal discovery. This was unfinished grief, reignited. Diana had always been the people's princess. Now, decades after her death, she was speaking again. And this time, they were listening. Hashtags exploded, hashtag Diana's Garage, hashtag Garage Gate, hashtag Letters to William. Commentators flooded television and radio. Former royal insiders started talking, quietly, carefully. But the message was clear. This wasn't just Camilla hiding items. This was the institution hiding the woman it could never control. Camilla remained out of sight for 5 days. No public appearances, no statements, just silence. The kind that only confirms what people already suspect. And then came the one moment that made it personal. William canceled his upcoming engagement. That had never happened. He was seen later that night entering Kensington Palace, alone, and with him, a sealed envelope, identical to the one found in the trunk, the one marked, "For William, when he's ready." No one knows what was inside. No one ever will. But the change in him was visible. When he appeared again, his expression had hardened. Not angry, resolved, as if something had finally clicked into place. The monarchy tried to contain the story. A generic press release was issued. Historic materials were discovered during scheduled maintenance. No further comment. It fooled no one. Because this wasn't just about materials. It was about Camilla and what she'd hidden. About the letters, the recordings, the map, the car, and the one woman whose legacy had refused to die quietly. People gathered outside Buckingham Palace once again, not in protest, but in reflection, holding flowers, holding signs, holding photos of Diana, as if welcoming her back into the conversation she was forced out of so long ago. One by one, the questions grew louder. Why was she being watched? What did the tapes really prove? And how did Queen Camilla hold the key to all of it? Clarence House has locked the garage again, but it's too late. The door opened. The truth escaped. And nothing, not even the crown, can seal it back in. The garage is locked again, but the damage is done. Letters, recordings, and a shadowed map have left the monarchy reeling. Camilla's silence speaks volumes, and Diana's legacy is louder than ever. One room changed everything, and now the public wants answers. Because some secrets were never meant to stay hidden.